be chatting about serial fiction and all of that good stuff. But because I was sort of in the mood, I thought I'd do a little live and natter about some random stuff that's on my brain. If anyone has questions, stick them down in the chat about serial fiction or writing a newsletter as a fiction writer, short stories. Although I would not say I'm an expert on short stories. I am currently attempting to write a short story, which actually is going to be the first thing I'm going to talk about. On Monday I posted a little extract from the start of this new short story I'm writing, which is untitled. It's sort of climate fiction, sort of. I won't get into the story of it right now, but something I found really interesting, having written serial fiction for the last decade, and my last big project, which wrapped up in January, started in 2021. So I'm much more used to writing long form stuff that goes on and on and on, as people may say. The pacing of a short story, obviously from a story perspective, the pacing is completely different. But what I hadn't quite anticipated was the pacing of the writing of it. So when I'm doing a serial, I'm posting a new chapter every week. The way I do it, I don't write the manuscript ahead of time. I write and publish as I go, which I really like. It keeps me honest, keeps me coming back to the page, keeps me productive over a long period of time. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for everyone. Depends on your writing style, but it works really nicely for me. But it means that I have to produce a chapter every week. And for me, that usually means at least 1,200 words. And over the last, 4.5 years, I produced 1,200 words every week and published it. I mean, I'll let other people decide on the actual quality of those words, but regardless, that's what I produced and sent out. And since finishing Triverse, I had a little bit of a break, had about a month off, and I'm now fiddling around with this short story, and it's taken ages. It's really short. It's a short story, but actually getting the words down is really hard. And I think it's because when you're writing a serial or anything long form, like a novel, what have you, you've got a lot of space, you've got a lot of time to fine tune things. And although you want all of it to be really good and really high quality, if one chapter in a 4-year serial is not quite up to snuff, it's not the end of the world as long as all the other chapters are great. One chapter that's slightly less exciting is okay. In a short story, you don't have any space for that. Every single tiny bit of a short story has to be absolutely spot on, and that puts a lot of pressure on the words to be the exact right words. There's no hiding away from it. Also, there's people writing on Substack who do short stories all the time. I'm thinking Jimmy Doom in particular, who I don't think he does it quite at the moment, but for a long period he was writing a short story every single day for over a year. It was amazing. But there are experts who do this, so nothing I'm saying is particularly revelatory. But for me, it's been really interesting, just seeing that kind of slower pace and the fact that I feel like I'm kind of dragging my way through this thing. I'm quite enjoying it. I'm fairly pleased with where it's headed, but it feels like I'm having to be a lot more careful. Maybe it could also be that it's not set in the Triverse setting, so I have no foundation or scaffolding, like I was saying on the newsletter earlier this week. I've got nothing to lean on. With Triverse, I always had months or years of history to draw upon, so I kind of always knew there was no such thing as a blank page, I suppose. Whereas with a short story, completely fresh, it definitely has blank page syndrome. Just looking in chat, and Erica has appeared, and hope you're feeling all right, Erica, and that the ankle is not too bad. I used to have really weird, weak ankles when I was a child. As in every couple of weeks, I would twist my ankle in some way. The worst incident being when I was about 17. I think I was on a beach with a bunch of friends. Thought it'd be really clever to run over a bunch of logs. I don't know why these logs were on the beach, but in a kind of pyramid shape. So I ran up the logs, ran down, twisted my ankle really badly, but my momentum was so fast that I couldn't stop. So I then ran another couple of steps down onto the ankle that I'd just twisted. But it was very painful. Apparently not broken. I was slightly disappointed it wasn't broken. I've actually never broken a bone. which is a good thing. But yeah, I kind of live in fear of it happening at some point. Anyway, I may have gone off topic slightly. So the other thing with the short story is it's coming out a lot darker than my usual stuff. So I think with my long form material, although like bad things happen to characters and in the story and it can get quite grim, overall the tone of it is optimistic. Like I enjoy writing optimistic fiction. Ultimately, that's the feeling I want a reader to come away with in some way by the end of it. With the short story, I don't kind of feel that obligation. In a way, it feels slightly more cathartic, and I find myself in all my short story ideas trending towards a much darker style of storytelling, where it doesn't have to have an uplifting kind of moment. It's just grim throughout. It's weird. I'm just looking in the chat here. What have we got? Erica says, writing 100 stories for 1,000 days and now attempting to write something longer isn't coming as easily. Oh, interesting. So kind of the opposite way round to what I've been doing. Yeah. Nice. I think that's the thing, because we build habits, don't we? So like whatever type of writing you do, you want to build a good regular habit, because that's the only way you're going to make it happen and also get better at it, because you have to just do it a lot, whatever your preferred thing is. And for like 10 years, I've been writing serials across 4 different projects, and I think I got quite good at it, or at least the rhythm that I produced worked really well for my brain. Suddenly shifting into short stories is an interesting challenge. What else? I made some notes here about stuff to jabber about. There's some chat on notes this week. I just saw people talking about over-world building. So this concept of world building too much. And I was quite intrigued by it, because there was, as you might expect, some discourse. And I was kind of intrigued, like, is there such a thing as too much world building? And I don't think you can really put a specific measure on the right amount of world building, because it's entirely dependent per project. But personally, I try these days to go for a sort of minimum viable product approach to world building. So I want to do just as much as I need to know what I need to know in order to tell the story. And I don't do any more than that. Or at least I don't do any more than that prior to starting writing. Once I start writing, I will then develop and keep world building in the background. So, I'm writing my serial, but over here I'm fleshing out the world as I go along, but in a kind of just in time sort of way. Like I build it out and add detail as needed, because my brain definitely is of the tendency that I could world build forever and never get around to actually writing the thing itself, in which case it's all a bit pointless. Whether you're writing stories or creating games or films or whatever it is you're doing, I think my preference is to do the least amount of world building possible, but that could mean still doing a lot of world building. So for Triverse, for example, because I had these 3 different settings, and then the problem here was that because it was predominantly crime fiction, I had to do a lot of upfront world building, because if you think about really good crime procedurals, most of them take place in the real world, so you get a lot of the world building for free. But that also means that you sort of know how the police work, you know what's possible in terms of crimes that can be committed, and quite often the interesting aspect of a crime story is knowing the rules of the real world, and yet something was stolen, or how did this person get away with the murder, or how could this have happened when it shouldn't be possible? Those are quite often the setups in crime fiction, but that only works because they exist within parameters that the reader or the viewer or what have you understand. As soon as you transpose that into fantasy and science fiction, particularly in the case of Triverse, where I had fantasy and science fiction, if I didn't know the rules of the world, I could basically just make it up as I went along, and then that would be really rubbish for readers, because you want a reader of crime stories to feel like at least they could work it out themselves, that the evidence is there and it's a fair puzzle in terms of trying to figure it out. What's Erica said here? I feel if the world building is happening more than the actual story writing, then there's too much world building happening. Sally says, world building and writing often feel like two separate hobbies to be combined with care. Yeah, this is true. And also there's world building in terms of the sort of preparatory. I don't know how to say that. Preparing to write the story. But then once you have enough world building done in order to tell your story, there's then how do you expose that world building to the audience? And that's a whole separate thing as well. Like regardless of how much or how good your world building is. Same with historical fiction, like how you then reveal that to the reader and how much you do. Again, you almost want to do like the least amount possible and let them fill in the rest. And one of the reasons I like Lord of the Rings, just to take a really obvious example, but actually there's a lot of world building delivered in the text, but there's mostly there's a lot unsaid. And I think that's why it works really nicely, because you can feel, you can sense this massive history of the world and all the work that Tolkien put in, but he doesn't actually put it all into the main text. Like you can go and fiddle around in the appendices at the back and all that kind of stuff. But even when it's not directly in the text, you can sort of feel that it's there and it all hangs together quite nicely. So that's cool. What else? Oh yeah, also on notes. Clearly I've been on notes too much this week. This is what happens when I'm not writing a serial. Maybe this is why the short story's taken so long. But yeah, I'm going to read this note. I'm not going to say who it's from because I don't want to do like a whole pile-on thing. But I saw someone else like restacked this. So I'll just read a little bit. So here we go. And I'm going to quote. So, please stop writing 2,500 plus word treatises. Treatises? I can't pronounce anything. Anyway, keep your posts under 1,000 words. The closer to 750, the better. Long writing is lazy writing. You're welcome. End quote. So I think it should be clear that advice is bollocks. Whatever you're writing, like the length of it is entirely dependent on whatever the thing is. Like there's no such thing as like the optimum word count. Like for my serials, I do advise that you aim for around 1,200 words, but that's sort of a practical thing in a way. It's practical for readers in terms of reading that material, but also if you're writing and producing a chapter every week, 1,200 words is just about doable. Any less and it's not that satisfying for the readers, any more and it starts to get really difficult to actually produce quality words to that count. But yeah, saying that you just have to like keep under a certain amount, or like long writing is lazy writing, that's such a random statement. Like lazy writing is lazy writing, it could be long or short. But yeah, I mean, it's the internet. People like to say what they think. But it just seemed strange. I guess the only time you might want to specifically have these hard targets is if the only thing that matters to you is newsletter growth and SEO and that kind of stuff. If you're really trying to game algorithms and technical behind the scenes search stuff, like that's when this is probably more important and more useful. But I think if that's your primary motivator and primary sort of measure of success, then you're probably going to be fairly miserable. Anyway, I mean that would be my thinking. Yeah, I think write whatever it needs, but a bit like world building. Some stories will be great if they're 100 words. Some require 100,000 words, but there's no like formula. Yeah, everyone's different, right? What have we got over here? Yeah, quantifying the perfect amount of words. It's a bit like some people try and quantify the like number of books you should read or the minimum number of books you should read, which always slightly confuses me. Like I completely agree that writers should read as many books as they can. I think that's a really good general tip. But in terms of like putting numbers on these things, just doesn't seem very useful. And yeah, I think you're right, Erica, that like that advice speaks more to readers, but also like if as a writer you think your readers can't handle anything over 700 words, then you're not really respecting your readers. And I think something I found both professionally over the years, sort of building and managing communities online, but then also just doing this newsletter thing. Like, you cultivate your own audience. So, if you want to cultivate an audience of people who can't read anything over 700 words, that's cool. Do that. But, that will produce a certain audience. If you want to produce an audience that's more content with, longer stuff or a range of word counts, then that's also fine. Yeah, but that was kind of weird. What else? This is not exactly related to writing, but did everyone see that OpenAI shut down Sora? Oh well. My prediction, based entirely on vibes, I reckon that OpenAI will probably go bankrupt within the next 12 months, and or be like bailed out by the US government. So that would be interesting. It's just hard to see how any of the finances add up. And although it's not directly related to like writing and what I'm on about here, like AI is seeping into everything. And whether you like or not, I've always been a very pro tech kind of person. So it's slightly annoyed me that the last decade has been really strange tech that has been either boring or weird or sort of technology in search of a purpose. I miss the days when every new tech thing was exciting. And now we have this weird tech that is actively getting in the way of other tech because they're eating all the RAM chips and stuff. Anyway, that's just me rambling. But it's interesting that this big thing that was to produce AI videos that was going to destroy television and film has just gone away already. And Disney were going to make this $1 billion investment, and that looks a bit embarrassing. Yeah, I don't know. I think when all this stuff appeared in 2022, I think it was predicted that within 2 years, authors would be out of a job, right? There'd be nobody writing books. Why would anyone be writing books? You can just generate stuff. And that hasn't really happened. The systems have got slightly less incompetent. But I think increasingly, regardless of how good they get or don't get, I think that early panic about all human creativity disappearing and having no place, I don't think that's going to ever be the case. I think it's maybe been surprising that we've all had to rethink what creativity means to each of us and what entertainment means in terms of movies, music, books, etc. And yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing to have to think a bit more carefully about some of that. Anyway, that was me wittering on for a bit. If anyone's got any questions about writing serial fiction via newsletters, stick them down in chat. Happy to stick around for a bit and do some questions. The only reason I'm able to do this, by the way, is that my son is at volleyball and it goes on till 10:30 or something. So ordinarily, you have the evening thing of you finish work and then you have to make dinner and then you have to do some taxiing around and then you have to sort out bedtime and then before you know it, it's 11 o'clock and everyone's knackered. But not tonight, I've got loads of time. I should be writing my short story, but instead I'm doing this and talking into a camera. But yeah, that's modern life, isn't it? But yeah, if there's no questions, we'll wrap it up there. And yeah, be back on Monday with Erica and Essie Reed, where we'll have an actual conversation, which will be considerably more interesting than just me talking at my own face, because I can see my face on the screen. So I'm literally having a conversation with myself. There's, is it Narcissus? Just talks to his own reflection. Feels a little bit like that. So I should probably stop. Okay. Have lovely evenings and speak to you all very soon.